Hundreds and hundreds are missing in huge Taiwan mudslide. A mudslide touched off by a deadly typhoon has buried a remote mountain village in Taiwan, leaving at least 400 people and rising unaccounted for, while a massive landslide in China toppled at least 7 apartment buildings, officials have said. Typhoon Morakot slammed Taiwan over the weekend with as much as 83 inches of rain before crossing the 112-mile-wide Taiwan Strait and hitting China. The storm inflicted the worst flooding the island has seen in at least half a century, submerging large areas of farmland in chocolate-brown muck and swamping city streets. Taiwanese authorities put the confirmed death toll in Taiwan at 38, but that seems certain to rise. The country's cabinet set aside $600 million in emergency funds to help with relief work and to compensate victims' families. A disaster appeared to be unfolding at an isolated southern village hit by a mudslide on Sunday at approximately 6 a.m. local time, when many people were still asleep and now cut off by land from the outside world. Speaking to the Associated Press, a Taiwanese police official who identified himself only by his surname said 400 people were unaccounted for in the village. He also said at least 100 people had been rescued or otherwise avoided the brunt of the disaster. The mudslide covered a large part of the village, including a primary school and many homes. A part of the mountain above us just fell on the village. Dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, missing elsewhere. Elsewhere in Taiwan, an additional 62 people were listed as missing so far. The typhoon's path took it almost directly over the capital of Taipei, but its most destructive effects were in the heavily agricultural south and along the island's densely forested mountain spine. In rural Pingtung County, the rains turned rich areas or swaths of farmland so sodden that it is difficult to distinguish them from the open sea. In one community, troops maneuvered armored personnel carriers through flooded streets, rescuing whole families from waterlogged buildings and ferrying them to safety. In the southeastern lowlands, a raging flood toppled a 5-story hotel, and anxious relatives in one county begged the president to help their loved ones. Apartments destroyed in China. After ravaging Taiwan, Morakot slammed Sunday into China's Fujian province, directly across the strait. With heavy rains and winds of at least 74 miles per hour, according to the China Meteorological Administration. Authorities evacuated 1.4 million people. The heavy rains triggered massive landslides and destroyed 7 3-story apartment buildings at the foot of a mountain. Unknown numbers of residents were buried in the landslides. Hundreds of villages and towns were flooded, and more than 6,000 houses collapsed or were swept away. Before plowing into Taiwan, the storm hit the Philippines, where it killed at least 22. 13 were killed in Japan. In Japan, meanwhile, another typhoon slammed into the western coast Monday. At least 13 people were killed in raging floodwaters and more landslides, and many others were missing. Police said about 2,200 people were evacuated from their homes and were staying at public schools. Some 500 houses or more were flooded. TV footage showed houses that had been destroyed by huge landslides and heavily damaged by flooding, with some residents working to clear mud and water from their homes with shovels and buckets. More extreme weather, intense weather, very strong typhoons, huge typhoons. It was like a double-barreled shot. And climate change is real. Climate change is happening. It's already here. Extreme, intense weather all around the world. Watch the weather change. And there's something more, something else going on here. And these are signs of the end times transition days. The transition is happening daily all around the world. And there are many, many signs.